was my sophomore year at college, and a student sits down at the cafeteria table one evening and shares a story. She was from Puerto Rico. I believe I pronounced that correctly. Yes. Thank you. Verification. She was an English as a second language student, extremely poor, working as hard as she could just to go to school. And she worked in two different departments at the college. She worked for custodial, and she worked for grounds. She had just finished that day running one of those lawnmowers that has the three blades. You pull the handle, and it takes off, and you chase after it the whole way. She was mowing an area at the college I went to called the Pecan Grove, and while she was mowing, she heard a big crunch. Thinking it was either a bunch of pecans from the trees around or a rock, she just continued on. Several minutes later, she looked down and she noticed that the big key chain that she wore on her belt was missing. She got really scared because, you see, on this key ring, she had 8 of the school keys, and each key was a $20 deposit, $160 worth of keys. And in 1991, that's a lot of money. She didn't know what to do. She remembered the sound, the crunch, and she said, that's what it was. It was my keys. I ran over my keys with the lawnmower. And so she ran back to the spot where she recalled that sound had taken place, and she gets on her hands and her knees, and she begins to search for these keys. She searches for over 30 minutes, and she can't find her keys. At that time, my advisor, my main professor of biology, he comes walking home, and he's cutting across Pecan Grove. And as he sees this girl on her hands and knees, he stops and he says, hey, what's wrong? And she tells him the story. She's telling me the story in the cafeteria, and she says, I told him what happened, and he says, is that all? And I thought, what a jerk. What a jerk. Is that all? It's a lot of money. But she says he did something right after that. He fell to his knees and he prayed right there. She said he only prayed for maybe a minute, and then he got up, took a couple of steps, tall man, over 6 foot, bent down, picked up a key out of the grass, turned and handed it to her, and went, bent down, picked up a second key and handed it to her. The third key, she said, was extremely strange because he actually dug down into the moist soil about that deep. The key had shot down into the soil. He pulled it out, dusted it off, and handed it to her, and did that with every single key, digging up 2 keys, even gave her a little shards of the plastic key ring, handed it all in her hands, and says, is that it? She said, yeah. He says, all right, have a great day, and he walked off. So she tells me the story at dinner time, and I've grown up in the church. I know this doesn't happen. I know that's not how prayer works. And so the next morning, I was in class, and he had a free period right after our class, and I had a free period right after the class. So I stopped by and said, hey, can I talk to you in your office afterwards? Because I was actually quite curious, because there's power in that story, a power that I don't know what your religious background is, but a power that I didn't grow up with. You hear of these things happening in Africa and, happening in far distant places by people you can never track. But you never hear it happening to someone that close. And so I was a bit curious. And so I met with him after class, sat down in his office. I said, there was a crazy story. I think it's kind of gotten out of proportion. So I just wanted to ask you about this story. And I just began, there's this girl, she was mowing the lawn, and he says, oh, yeah. And he finishes the story. Just completes the whole story for me. And I said, yeah, that was it. So I got some questions. I got some questions about this prayer thing, because, you see, I pray all the time, and God doesn't show me keys. I would love to do that. My roommate loses his keys and his wallet at least once a day. I could really use this. I said, I just don't get it. What are you doing in your prayer walk that's that's obviously getting you different results than other people that I know. And he says, well, that's easy. How do you pray? I said, well, I pray like everyone else. He says, no. Pray. Right now? Yeah, just pray. Show me how you pray. All right. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for my incredible professor who's here, and thank you for this campus, and thank you for the whole key thing. And he says, and I was just like, I don't know what to pray about. And he goes, go on. So, help me to continue doing well in biology class. He said, go on. I said, help me financially to be able to pay for college. He said, go on. Lord, help me to help other people. He said, go on. I don't know. Amen. He said, that's your problem. That's your problem right there. I said, what's my problem? I don't get it. He says, what did you say? I said, I don't know. I was just praying. He says, that's not prayer. What you were doing was not prayer. Talking is not prayer. If you want to hear God's voice, you got to give him some time. Prayer is not a monologue. I said, what? Unpack that. I don't even understand what you're talking about. So he says, look, you did all the talking. How much time did you give God to give you his requests? God has requests. It was at that moment that he set me on a journey that completely changed my life. Because up to that moment, prayer for me, the velvet box, was me having a chance to come to God, to butter him up with some praise. Oh, you're so good, you're so great. Now give me this. And I was doing all the talking. Most of the time, I felt like my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling, when at the exact same time, all of God's prayers were bouncing off my roof. God has requests for you. He had requests for me, and we're filling up all the space with the talking. Jesus tried sharing with us, look, what do you think? You earthly fathers, you're giving good gifts to your sons. How much more do you think your heavenly Father wants to give you good gifts? The problem is we're not receiving them because we're not even giving him the time of day. We think we are, but in essence, we're sitting on a red velvet suited, white-bearded guy's lap saying, I want a pony. I want a train set. When God says, that's not what I'm about. Yes, I want to give you good gifts, but prayer is something completely different altogether. What my professor did to me there is he said, hey, look, I'm going to ask you to do something. For the next 30 days, 15 minutes twice a day, I want you to pray. But I don't want you to pray like you've been praying. I want you to only talk half of the time and give God the other half. I said, that's awesome. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that right now. And I left his office and I went to my dorm room. My roommate was in his class. I had the room all to myself. So on my lower bunk, I took my Bible and I just laid it open. I have no idea what text it was, but it just seemed really spiritual at the time. Open up my Bible. I took my watch. I laid it right next to it because I was going to be precise, because God was going to talk to me. I'm giving him a chance. And so I knelt right there and I just started praying. Oh, Lord, thank you so much for this new clarification and everything. And Lord, I just want you to speak. I'm listening. You know, I want to be connected to you. And okay, it's the end of a minute. You go, God. And I'm going to tell you, at that very moment when I said, you go, you know what I heard? Yeah, that's exactly what I heard. I heard nothing. It was just silent. Okay. So I was like, okay, it's my minute. So I started praying again. Okay, God, you know, and here's my concerns, and here's my life, and here's all this stuff, and I'm praying and praying and praying. Okay, now you go. Hey, you can go now. It's all about you, Jesus. Silence. Silence. I realized what I did wrong. I talked first. I should have let God talk first. And so that evening, I was like, okay, God, I'm not even going to say anything. Dear Lord. And at that very moment, at the precise moment, because I gave God the very first chance to speak, I still heard nothing. Absolutely nothing. For 30 days, I tried every different little system. Well, let me give him 7.5 minutes. Maybe he was about to speak and I started speaking. That ever happened to you? That's really awkward. Nothing. Back, forth, until finally, the 30th day, God has an incredible sense of humor. Exactly on the 30th day, God literally spoke to me and rocked my world. It was my call to ministry, and I didn't like what I heard because I was going to be a doctor. I was coming to Loma Linda to be a doctor. And at that very moment, God says, finally, you're committed. Finally, you've decided to remain in me and just listen. Finally, you've proven you're going to do this thing, even if you're not hearing what you want to hear, if you're not hearing anything at all. You've said, I'm going to continue. I've given this challenge, as you can imagine, over the past 20 some odd years. I've given this challenge to countless people. 30 days, 15 minutes a day, twice a day. And I have to tell you the responses I've gotten back, because I've gotten hundreds of responses back. God has always communicated back differently. Most people, they don't have to wait 30 days. I'm just extremely stubborn, and so he had to wait the full 30 days. Other people, it's been much less time, and how God has moved on their life and how he's connected with them and the fruit that he's begun to bear through their lives. It's just magical. It will rock your world. Today, I want to ask you, in the call to prayer, as you're kneeling down, as you're driving in your car, as you're doing whatever, laying in your bed, and you're saying, God, I'm going to spend some prayer time. Let me ask you, is it just about what you want? Is it just about what you have to say? Or can you just remain in his beautiful presence? And if he says something great, if not great, I'm in God's presence. I tell people who ask me what my prayer life is like, I tell them it's really similar to these old couples you see sitting in the park. They're sitting on a bench, and it doesn't seem like they're saying hardly anything at all to each other. Every now and then they'll notice something, they'll say a little something, the other will smile and chuckle, and they're just sitting there, just sitting next to each other, holding hands, just as close as they can sit. But they're just remaining in each other's presence. They're not chatty. That's what you do when you're dating. They're growing. They're bonding. Every single second that passes, they're growing closer and closer together. That's what my prayer walk has become. Yeah, we talk about stuff, but it's more important that we remain in each other's presence. Can I turn your world upside down today? Can I completely change your life? From now on, make a specific point. God, I am stepping into your presence. I want you right here. And even if you don't say a word, it's just so nice to be right here with you. I can't believe the invincible King of the universe is right here with me. That's enough. That's all I need. And the more you do that, the more you remain, the more you connect with that vine, and you become so engrafted to that vine that all that nutrients that comes from the roots of the main vine starts coming out, and before you know it, you can't help it. But the fruit of the kingdom is just coming out. Can I change your life today? I give you a challenge for the next 30 days, twice a day, 15 minutes a day minimum. Doesn't matter when it is. Put it on your calendar. Take your phone out, put it on your calendar. Schedule a regular appointment twice a day. But only spend at maximum 50% of the time talking. And let's see what God has to say.